So everybody here at the table, these are real people. They're real friends of mine. All these folks are folks that I really respect the way that they live out their walk with God. But they are also real people. Nobody perfect here, and everybody's just a good example of what it looks like for imperfect people to follow a perfect God. So I'm excited about this conversation. Appreciate all you guys and gals joining me for this. And so what we're doing here is really talking about a really big idea. The idea of following the Holy Spirit is this really big and huge concept that impacts in an important way every aspect of the Christ following life. And honestly, I think it's one of the most important things that we can talk about, one of the most important things that we can teach about, but I think it's one of the most difficult things to explain. And so my hope is that this conversation of real people talking about real life will be really helpful this morning. My hope is that as you share your examples of what it looks like to follow the Holy Spirit in your life, people will be able to see what it looks like to walk by the Spirit. So thanks for joining me. All right, so what is it like, just on a really basic level, to hear from God or to hear from the Holy Spirit?
I think initially when you first come to the Lord, it's like a baby that's learning mama, papa. And over a period of time, as you're developing time with each other, relationship is built. That baby learns how to respond to papa, mama, because the baby's heard that voice enough. I equate that the same way with God. When I first came to the Lord, I just knew that I fell in love with Jesus. I just wasn't 100% sure that he loved me because of all that I've done. But it took over a period of time, the Holy Spirit coming along through his word, showing me, you know what, he still loves me. And I start to hear his voice. And so over the period of time, I start to learn when I knew it was him. And I didn't have to question. But that came through simple obedience and little things and that relationship and all that came with it.
For me, it could be in multiple situations. Sometimes it's in a quiet time or a study time. Other times it's out in nature, seeing God's creation, listening. Sometimes it's in another person, the way they're speaking, a message they may have for me. It really could come from many different aspects.
So whether it's on the go or quiet times or something like that, what do you do to be more intentional about listening?
Years ago, I realized it had to be a choice. It had to be something I chose and that I wanted for myself. And if I don't choose that and take the initiative to get to know God, like you talked about, Ron, and get to really delve into his word and get to know his character, that has to be a choice on my part. That's when I started hearing him. And his word made sense to me then. And that was when I started to really feel the Holy Spirit and know that the Holy Spirit was working.
And when you start to hear from the Spirit, it seems like a great way to shut that down is to not obey.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The other night I was driving back from South Texas. I was listening to an audio book, great book about a woman's testimony. And very... caring for the least of these, right in the middle of Jesus' heart. I stop in Bay City, go to McDonald's, come back out. There's a gentleman sitting at a table, and he's drinking a cup of coffee. He's by himself. Something the Spirit said, there's something there. I walk back by, I see his bicycle outside, and I walked on. And I got to the car, and the Holy Spirit convicted me and said, you should have done something. Then the mental argument goes on. What could I do? What are the other people going to say? What was it? I work in Houston and see the people on every street corner with their sign. This guy was not like that, but I disobeyed. And I was convicted by the Holy Spirit sitting there in my car, and I had to pray and ask forgiveness for that.
So Scott, that prompting to do something and that conviction about not, what is that like? That's in your heart, that's in your head, how's that work?
Yes.
That's the
It's a
truth.
battle back and
Yeah.
forth between your spirit and your heart and your head. And so many times it's the head that ends up talking me out of it.
My life right now, walking with the Spirit, it's a battle. I feel like one of those tap out cage fighters and those octagonal fences, because I'm trying to trust God and I'm believing God and I'm clinging to His word. And I surround myself with as much as I can that's all about God. And sometimes I feel like I get knocked down and knocked out, and I'm going to arrive in heaven. I may be bloody and bruised, but I'm going to come in standing up because I believe. And so it's not it's not like, okay, I've got this. It's a constant moment by moment decision for me.
What does it look like to walk with the Spirit in big life decisions, like 10-year kind of decisions?
Our family is going through a lot right now. In this process of trying to sell a home, trying to start a business, trying to redirect where God is taking my life, my fleshly part says, I want a spreadsheet. I'm going to map it out. I'm going to have timelines. I'm going to have financial plans and all this other kind of stuff. And yes, there were some of those. There was a time for that. But now it's down to trust. Trust and big decisions. I mean, like our house. We have a house. It's been on the market for 10 or 12 months. And I'm totally convinced that God's there through all of this. And He's teaching me every day.
I think, this series is about the Holy Spirit in everyday life. The reality is we all make big decisions, but we make decisions all day long, every day, little detailed decisions, hour by hour. What does it look like to walk in the Spirit in that kind of way? Do you pray about little everyday things that are work-related, marriage-related, parenting-related?
Sure, love for worse, yes.
I mean, sometimes if my children, and dealing with my children, sometimes I have to pray, God, lead me in how I say what they need to hear.
So I'm in outside sales, and so I spend a lot of time meeting with people, and I very often, I wish I did this every time, but very, very often I'll pray before I go into a meeting. God, like I have a job to do, but God, we're going to talk about something that's, hobbies, hunting, fishing, whatever. God, how do you help me weave in who you are, what you mean to me? How do I make that a part of that conversation?
Sometimes it's just the prompting of the Spirit to smile at somebody or to speak. I mean, you never know the power of that. And God's got a plan that we may not even be aware of.
I think we can all agree that we wish that walking by the Spirit was always God leading us into opportunities to share our faith and opportunities to serve, or big decisions to glorify Him. But the reality is, part of walking by the Spirit is the Spirit's work in our life to walk us away from sin, right? So what does that look like for the Spirit to guide you away from sin and into godliness?
I'd say that without question that my greatest struggle with sin has been in the quiet places of where I allow my eyes to go in things in my life. And I'll just be completely vulnerable in saying that what I believe the Holy Spirit has allowed me to truly do is face those things, face the things that I know that I know are destructive, of things that I look at, things that I just, and so I'll never forget taking communion I don't know, that's probably about a year ago. And I always had gone through this repetition of saying, God, I'll do better next time. And I promise I'll do better next time. And I think that for the first time I actually realized when I took that bread and I took the cup, I realized that God just said, I love you. You're forgiven. Like, you're totally mine. And the things that you see yourself as, I don't see you as. I see you as Christ. And I felt for the first time that freedom of not, you got to get better, but man, I love you and I see all that, and I've seen all that for a long time. And you're free to be who I created you to be, and don't focus on what you haven't been able to do, but focus on who I'm making you and who I want you to be.
It's a process. This doesn't happen overnight. I think sometimes when people become believers, they think that this big thing happens, or that everything's just supposed to fall in place, and that's not what happens with the Holy Spirit. It's a journey. It's a process, and along that way, when I look back at my life 20 years ago, or when I look back at my life 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, I'm happy to say that I've made progress, that I'm still in process. I haven't arrived, and following the Holy Spirit to me is the same way. It is something that happens on a day-to-day basis because I choose to want to know Christ more.
So what we do is we declare our dependence, and then we just announce and advance our obedience. I mean, I think that's the part that we do in this. We declare our dependence on the Holy Spirit, and then we announce, you're in control, I'm going to be obedient. That's good. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much.